There is a moment in every life when we pause long enough to realize that we have never actually been alone, not once. Not even in the quiet corners where we thought no one could see us. And the truth is, God has been present in every season, even in the ones we misunderstood, resisted, or tried to outrun. We often look for His presence in the dramatic moments, the miracles, the breakthroughs, the turning points. Yet the real beauty lies in noticing Him in the small and ordinary places. The quiet breath before a difficult decision. The unexpected strength that appears when you think you've reached your limit. The soft whisper telling you to keep going when everything else inside you wants to give up. Those moments are not random. They are reminders that God has always been here, woven into the very fabric of your story. When you begin to recognize His presence, everything changes. Life doesn't suddenly become easier, but it becomes clearer. You start to understand that what felt like delays were actually protections. What felt like endings were bridges to something new. What felt like abandonment was preparation for a deeper, wiser kind of intimacy with Him. We tend to interpret God through the lens of our circumstances, but the invitation is to interpret our circumstances through the lens of God's character. And when you do, you start to see that even the hardest moments carried a kind of grace, quiet, subtle, but profoundly intentional. There are seasons where you are growing, but it feels like breaking. Seasons where you are being shaped, but it feels like loss. Seasons where God is rearranging the pieces of your life, and to you, it seems like things are falling apart. Yet, in hindsight, you can trace His fingerprints through it all. The friendship that ended, the opportunity that slipped away, the door that closed so abruptly you questioned your own worth. We resist those moments because they feel unfair, but sometimes God removes what you think you need to make room for what you truly need. And the only way to understand that is to acknowledge that He was present even when you could not feel Him. It's easy to see His presence when life is gentle. It's in the quieter seasons that we struggle, those stretches of silence where nothing seems to move, where your prayers feel like echoes, where your hope grows thin. But silence does not mean absence. Silence is often where God does His deepest work, where He watches whether you lean closer or walk away. You learn to recognize Him not through noise, but through alignment. The way your heart shifts, the way your strength slowly returns, the way your perspective transforms. He speaks through clarity, through conviction, through a kind of internal knowing that wasn't there before. And that inner shift is one of the purest signs of His presence. To bless your whole life, you must first recognize that He has been blessing your life all along, in ways you didn't always have the language to name. Your survival was a blessing. Your endurance was a blessing. Your ability to stand back up after being knocked down, that too was a blessing. Sometimes the blessing isn't the miracle. It's the resilience you developed while waiting for one. Sometimes the blessing isn't the open door. It's the strength you gained walking past the doors that weren't meant for you. And sometimes the blessing is simply the realization that you were carried through things you were never strong enough to handle alone. When you start noticing God in your past, you find the courage to trust Him with your future. Recognizing His presence builds the foundation for every other blessing that will follow. It teaches you to walk with a softer heart, a clearer mind, and a deeper faith. It teaches you not just to ask for blessings, but to understand the one who gives them. Awareness becomes gratitude, and gratitude becomes trust. And trust, true, wholehearted trust, becomes the doorway to a blessed life. And so, the journey begins with a simple acknowledgement. He has been with you, even when you did not know how to be with yourself. There comes a moment in every journey where you realize that control is a beautiful illusion. We cling to it because it gives us a sense of order, a sense of direction, a sense of power. But life has a way of reminding us that the more tightly we grip something, the more fragile it becomes in our hands. And when we ask God to bless our whole life, it often begins with the uncomfortable invitation to release our timeline, our expectations, and our need to make everything unfold the way we think it should, Surrender isn't about giving up. It's about giving over. It's the quiet recognition that there is a wisdom greater than your own, guiding you toward a place you cannot yet see. And while that can feel unsettling, it can also be deeply liberating. Because when you stop trying to control every detail, you make space for something better than your plans. You make space for divine timing. There are seasons when you feel like nothing is happening. You're praying, hoping, working, waiting, and the silence stretches longer than you think your faith can hold. You watch other people bloom while you feel stuck in soil that seems dry and forgotten. But timing is everything. A seed does most of its growing underground, hidden, unseen, uncelebrated, and yet the growth is real. The roots are forming, the foundation is being strengthened in ways that will matter later. We often confuse delayed with denied, but delay is sometimes the clearest sign that God is preparing something that requires more from us. More patience, more character, more faith, more maturity. We want the blessing quickly, but we rarely consider what would happen if we received it before we were equipped to carry it. A blessing delivered too soon becomes a burden. A promise reached too fast becomes pressure, and so the timing is not just divine, it is protective. There are moments in life when the door doesn't open, not because you lack value, but because what waits behind it isn't aligned with who you're becoming. There are relationships you didn't get, not because you were unworthy, but because the connection would have pulled you away from the person God is shaping you into. There are opportunities you lost, not because you weren't ready, but because your spirit needed a different direction. When you trust divine timing, you stop seeing closed doors as rejections and start seeing them as redirections. Trusting God's timing means understanding that life is not happening to you. It's happening for you. The pauses have purpose. The delays have design. Even the disappointments have depth. We think of timing as an obstacle, but often it is the very thing that protects us from entering seasons too heavy for our shoulders. It takes humility to admit that we do not see the full picture. It takes courage to lean into what we do not understand. And it takes faith to let go of the need to rush what God is refining. Imagine, for a moment, what would happen if you stopped questioning the pace of your life. If you stopped forcing doors open. If you stopped chasing timelines that were never meant to belong to you. Imagine what peace would emerge if you trusted that the things meant for you cannot be taken from you, delayed beyond their purpose, or redirected to someone else. What is meant for your life already has your name written on it. It simply arrives at the moment when you are ready to receive it with the strength, humility, and wisdom it requires. And so the art of surrender is also the art of trust. Not blind trust, but grounded trust, the kind born from looking back at the moments when things didn't make sense, only to realize later that they were unfolding exactly the way they needed to. When you embrace divine timing, you let go of anxiety, you let go of comparison, and you step into a gentler, wiser rhythm for your life. In the end, trusting God's timing is not about moving slower, it's about moving truer. And sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is release the clock and let God lead you into a future you no longer need to control. There is a deep truth we often overlook. Blessings don't just arrive because we want them, they arrive because we are prepared to receive them. And preparation doesn't happen outside of us, it happens within. We spend so much time asking God for bigger opportunities, better relationships, greater success, and deeper peace. But rarely do we stop long enough to ask whether our hearts have the space, softness, and the strength to hold what we are praying for. A blessing is not just a gift, it's a responsibility, and a heart that is cluttered, wounded, or closed struggles to hold anything new without breaking under the weight of it. There are moments when God is not withholding blessings from you. He's waiting for you to release what is blocking them. Sometimes it's resentment you've carried so long it feels like part of your identity. Sometimes it's a memory that still stings in places you never fully acknowledged. Sometimes it's anger disguised as strength or disappointment buried under layers of self-protection. We carry these emotions as shields, believing they keep us safe, but they also keep us stuck. A heart filled with old battles has no room for new beginnings. The process of cleansing the heart is not about erasing your past. It's about understanding that your past doesn't deserve to rule your present. You don't have to pretend the pain didn't happen, but you also don't have to drag it into every chapter of your life. Healing doesn't ask you to forget. It asks you to release. And release is an act of courage, because to let go is to trust that something better is waiting on the other side of grief, on the other side of disappointment, on the other side of the story you've been repeating to yourself for years. When your heart is heavy, blessings feel overwhelming. When your heart is bitter, blessings feel undeserved. When your heart is guarded, blessings feel suspicious. But when your heart is open, blessings feel natural. They find you, they settle into you, they grow within you. A clean heart is like fertile ground. Whatever lands there has room to take root. Sometimes the cleansing comes through confrontation, facing the truths you've avoided because they made you uncomfortable. Sometimes it comes through stillness, those quiet moments when you finally hear the emotions you've been drowning out with busyness. And sometimes it comes through forgiveness, not for the sake of the other person, but so your own spirit can breathe again. Forgiveness is not the acceptance of injustice, it's the release of the burden that justice alone cannot heal. A purified heart doesn't mean a perfect heart. It means a heart willing to soften, willing to listen, willing to grow. It means choosing peace over pettiness, growth over grudges, intention over impulse. It means understanding that your emotional landscape is the home where your blessings will live, and you get to decide whether that home is chaotic or welcoming. When you begin to clean the inner space, something subtle but powerful happens. Your vision becomes clearer. Your desires become more aligned with your purpose, your relationships become more authentic, your decisions become less reactive and more grounded, and your prayers shift from "give me more" to "make me ready." That shift is everything, because blessings don't elevate you if your heart is not aligned with them, they expose you. But when the heart is steady, blessings amplify the best parts of who you are becoming. And so this journey of inner cleansing is not about punishment. It is about preparation. You are not being asked to let go because you are empty. You are being asked to let go so you can be filled. And when you dare to release what weighs you down, you make room for the life you've been praying for to finally find its way in. A blessed life begins with a heart that is willing to be free. There's a subtle shift that happens in your life when you choose to stop focusing on what is missing and start paying attention to what is already here. Gratitude is not an emotion that arrives when everything is perfect. It's a practice, a discipline, a way of seeing the world. And it is one of the most powerful gateways to a blessed life. When you move from complaint to gratitude, from scarcity to appreciation, you begin to experience life in a fuller, more grounded way. Not because your circumstances have changed, but because you have. We live in a world that trains us to look for what's wrong. We notice what we lost, what we didn't get, what others have, where we fell short. This mindset creates a low-grade dissatisfaction that follows us everywhere, even into moments that are actually good. And without realizing it, we become emotionally wired to overlook the blessings right in front of us. Gratitude interrupts this pattern. It disrupts the narrative that something is always missing. It invites us to see what we have instead of obsessing over what we don't. The truth is, a grateful heart can hold blessings in a way a complaining heart never can. Complaint shrinks your world. Gratitude expands it. When you complain, you reinforce lack. When you express gratitude, you reinforce abundance. And God responds to the posture of your heart. A grateful heart is open, receptive, willing to grow. It's a heart that doesn't demand perfection from life in order to feel blessed. It learns to celebrate small beginnings, quiet progress, and subtle victories. Sometimes gratitude begins with something as simple as acknowledging, that you survived moments you never thought you would, that you grew in places others expected you to break, that you were held together by a strength that wasn't entirely your own. Gratitude is not about ignoring pain or pretending everything is fine. It's about refusing to let pain be the only voice in the room. It teaches you to say, even in this, I can still find something good. There are days when gratitude is easy. It flows naturally, effortlessly, almost as a response to joy. But the real power is found on the days when gratitude feels like heavy lifting, the days when you have to look harder, breathe deeper, and choose thankfulness even when you're still healing. That kind of gratitude is not soft, it's fierce. It's the kind that doesn't deny reality, but insists on seeing beyond it. And when you live from a place of gratitude, something remarkable happens. Your relationships deepen, your perspective widens, your heart softens, you become less reactive and more reflective. You stop demanding that life proves its value to you and instead begin to show up with appreciation. Gratitude changes not only what you see, but how you see. It turns ordinary moments into sacred ones. It turns simple interactions into meaningful connections. It turns burdens into lessons and lessons into wisdom. When you practice gratitude consistently, you begin to attract blessings in a way that feels almost effortless. Not because life suddenly becomes perfect, but because you become aligned with the energy of appreciation rather than frustration. Gratitude doesn't just open doors. It opens your eyes. It reveals opportunities you once overlooked. It invites more grace into your life simply because you have made room for it. And perhaps the greatest shift gratitude creates is trust. Trust that you are being guided. Trust that your story is unfolding with intention. Trust that even in the silence, even in the waiting, even in the not yet, there is something good being written for you. Gratitude is the bridge between where you are and the blessing you're moving toward. It keeps you grounded when life feels chaotic, hopeful when life feels uncertain, and open when life feels overwhelming. A blessed life begins not when everything is perfect, but when you choose to appreciate the beauty already placed in your hands. And so it becomes simple. Gratitude turns what you have into more than enough. There comes a time when you realize that the blessings you carry are not meant to stay contained within the boundaries of your own life. They are meant to move through you, to touch others, to shift something in the world around you. We often think of blessings as something personal, something we receive, something that improves our situation, something that makes our path easier. But the truth is far more expansive. The more you allow yourself to become a vessel of blessing for others, the more your own life begins to overflow in ways you could never have engineered on your own. It's easy to think that giving is something you do only when you're in abundance, but giving is not an act of wealth. It's an act of spirit. There are people who have very little yet give endlessly, and there are those who have more than enough yet remain closed, guarded, protective of every resource, every emotion, every moment of their time. But blessings don't flow from accumulation. They flow from generosity of heart. When you are willing to extend kindness, offer comfort, speak encouragement, share wisdom, or simply hold space for someone who needs it, you become part of something larger than yourself. There's a profound shift that happens when you stop asking, "What can I get?" and start asking, "What can I give?" It doesn't make you smaller. It makes you larger. It stretches your emotional capacity, expands your perspective, and creates connection in ways that fill you with a sense of purpose. Because every time you bless someone else, whether through a kind word, a supportive gesture, or a moment of compassion, you set in motion a ripple that travels far beyond anything you can see. And here's the beauty: being a vessel for blessing doesn't require perfection. It requires presence. It requires intention. It requires a heart that isn't so consumed with its own story that it forgets the stories unfolding in the people around you. You never know who is holding themselves together with the last thread of hope. You never know who is carrying a silent burden. You never know who is praying for a sign that they are not as alone as they fear. And sometimes the blessing God places in your hands is meant for someone else's breakthrough. There is a certain humility that comes with recognizing that not all blessings are meant to stay with you. Some are entrusted to you so you can deliver them. A word you speak may be the very thing someone needed to hear at the exact moment their courage was fading. A gesture you offer may restore faith in someone who was beginning to doubt the goodness of people. The way you choose to show up for others becomes part of how God shows up through you. Living as a vessel doesn't drain you. It refines you. It teaches you to give without losing yourself, to serve without feeling small, to support others without forgetting your own worth. It teaches you that generosity is a pathway to abundance, not depletion. When you give from a place of love rather than obligation, something inside you expands. You begin to understand why blessings never meant to stay stagnant. They are meant to be shared, multiplied, returned in new and unexpected forms. And when you consistently become a source of blessing, you start noticing a gentle reciprocity unfolding in your life. The support you offered returns to you when you least expect it. The kindness you extended finds its way back to you in moments when you need it most. The love you gave freely without agenda becomes the love that holds you in your difficult seasons, not because you demanded it, but because you created a flow in which blessings can move freely toward you, through you, and back to you. What ultimately matters is not how much you receive, but how much you allow the grace in your life to become grace in someone else's. When you choose to be a vessel instead of a reservoir, you align yourself with the very nature of blessing, something meant to move, grow, and transform everything it touches. A blessed life is a life that knows how to give. There comes a moment in every relationship, every partnership, every friendship, where we realize that harmony is not the absence of conflict. Harmony is what we create in the presence of conflict, and for many of us, conflict feels like a threat, like a sign that something is broken. We react quickly, we defend, we withdraw, we raise our voice, or we silence it entirely. But the real question isn't whether we fight, it's how we repair. Repair is the art we were never taught. Most of us grew up learning how to win an argument, not how to reconnect after one. But relationships are not courts of law. They are living systems. And living systems don't need to be right. They need to be restored. The truth is, repair begins long before the apology. It starts with the willingness to see the other person's experience without immediately filtering it through our own. It's the moment we pause and ask, what is the story they're living right now? What is the meaning they're giving to this situation? Because conflict is rarely about the thing we're arguing about. It's about what that thing represents: respect, safety, recognition, freedom, belonging. When someone feels unheard, the argument becomes louder. When someone feels unseen, the distance grows wider. But when someone feels understood, even just a little, something softens. Something shifts, and that shift is the birthplace of repair. Many people think repair means admitting wrongdoing, but it's much bigger than that. Repair is an invitation. It says, we may not agree, but we are still on the same side. I still choose us. It's not about surrendering your truth. It's about creating a space where both truths can sit side by side without canceling each other out. Sometimes repair is simply the courage to say, I see the impact my words had on you, even if that wasn't my intention, or I didn't realize that moment touched such an old wound in you, or even, I'm still upset, but I don't want to disconnect from you. These are not admissions of defeat, they are acts of connection. They're reminders that the relationship is bigger than the argument. What often gets in the way of repair is pride, this fear that if we soften, we lose power. But the paradox is this: repair requires strength. It requires emotional agility, the ability to hold our feelings without letting them run the entire show. It demands the maturity to recognize that intimacy is built not through avoiding rupture, but through being able to come back from it again and again. There's also a timing to repair. Not everything can be fixed in the moment. Sometimes we need a pause, not as avoidance, but as preparation. A pause that allows the nervous system to reset, so we're not returning to the conversation with the same fire that burned it down in the first place. It's astonishing how much clarity appears when we give ourselves a little space to breathe, to reflect, to soften. And then there's the type of repair that doesn't use words at all. It's the hand reaching out under the table. It's the cup of tea placed next to someone who's been crying. It's the small gestures that say, "I'm here, we're still connected." Because intimacy is maintained not only through grand declarations, but through the quiet, consistent signals that remind us we matter. Over time, these small repairs become the threads that hold the fabric of a relationship together. They create resilience. They build trust. They give us confidence that even when things fracture, we know how to mend. And that is what allows a relationship to grow, not perfection, but the willingness to repair what inevitably breaks. When we learn the art of repair, conflict stops being something we fear and becomes something we can navigate. It becomes an opportunity to deepen understanding, to expand empathy, to reveal parts of ourselves we didn't know how to share before. It becomes a bridge, not a wall. And when we practice repair with intention, with humility, with presence, we send a clear message. Even when we falter, we choose to return. Again and again. And that choice, that returning, is where real connection lives. Because in the end, love is not measured by the moments we avoid breaking, but by the moments we choose to come back together.